Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I shall be doing my Blu-ray and DVD update for August 2020, which it has been a while since I've done an update video of sorts. It has been kind of crazy here in the UK with the past few months since when I did my last update video. We had literally just gone into a lockdown to do with the whole COVID virus situation, but things thankfully have been relieved slightly. The only unfortunate thing is some of the stores that I frequent to just buy used movies from are still surprisingly closed, so I've just been purchasing things online here and there. So to begin with a film that I did actually feature in my last update video, which is American Psycho. I actually hadn't watched this at that point in time, and I do definitely regret that because I really wish I could have spoken about this film there and then, as this was genuinely a very enjoyable film experience, particularly for Christian Bale's performance as Patrick Bateman. And this really was quite interesting as kind of a revitalization of the horror genre for sort of modern connotations. The early 2000s seemed to have a couple of films that really did sort of move away from typical kind of slasher films with this. The Saw movies is another example. And this was overall quite fascinating to get behind the eyes of a serial killer in a sense. And Patrick Bateman as a character is quite fascinating in that kind of realm, and Christian Bale really adds a lot to that character with the internal monologuing and stuff like that. Those are some features that really do strike me about characters like Patrick Bateman. It's something that carries over, which I personally quite like in films such as Fight Club, with Ed Norton's internal monologue as another example. But this was overall quite a thrill ride, and I really enjoyed the last 20 minutes or so where the body count really did rise quite surprisingly, and the sequence with the chainsaw and those moments onwards from then, that was overall fantastic and really well filmed as far as cinematography is concerned. And overall, a stellar performance from Christian Bale. Not an actor that I do closely follow, but this is definitely one of my new favourite performances from him. My favourite is still his character from The Machinist, but this was definitely a close second, and I really did enjoy what he brought to the character. So that is American Psycho, a film I would highly recommend. Next up we have Motherless Brooklyn, which is a passion project that Edward Norton has been trying to get onto the big screen for many, many years. This film is overall very rewarding for that aspect in particular, as you can really see the level of detail that Edward Norton has put into this, both being the director, but also being the main actor and star in this as the character of Lionel, who is a police detective in 1950s New York with Tourette syndrome. The way that is portrayed throughout this film is overall quite inspiring in some instances, but also really does go behind the eyes of someone that does suffer with sort of involuntary tics and slurring of words and random outbursts of speech and stuff like that. And this film really does connotate on that in particular because it's again a feature that seems to be more so a trope of Ed Norton as a kind of actor, basically, with films such as Fight Club and the movie with Richard Gere, which is called Primal Fear. I think that was one of his first acting credits, always having that internal monologue as an aspect to the film. And this film really does add a lot to that because we're going behind the eyes of someone that involuntarily shouts random absurdities or phrases, whereas on the inside he is sort of cool, collective, actually is able to process his thoughts in particular. The phrase that was often shouted in the film, I've got glass in my head, sort of like a metaphor for him constantly having rattling thoughts. I really enjoyed aspects like that really spoke a lot about the character. And as far as the main plot is concerned, it is kind of typical, with it just being a generic kind of murder mystery storyline. I think the only additional aspect to it is that it's actually the murder mystery solving the murder of a police detective as well. That's the mentor character that Bruce Willis portrays to Lionel, and even though his character's only in the movie for about 10, maybe 20 minutes, it does add a lot of exposition to the character of Lionel. The only sort of disappointing factor is I was kind of expecting a lot more from Bruce Willis in this movie, and maybe that could have been done in sort of flashback scenes, but I think that could have become sort of like too unnecessary at the end of the day. But yeah, as far as a detective story is concerned, I would definitely recommend checking this film out. Kind of slow in some instances, but I definitely think there's a lot packed into this film, and it will be one that I will keep in the collection for a while. I definitely do look forward to revisiting this in the near future. Next up is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which is just an incredibly convoluted follow-up to the first Jurassic World movie. Once again, taking themes from other Jurassic films and just sort of throwing them into a blender and seeing what shit comes out. Not to say that this film was overall just unwatchable, but compared to the first four Jurassic movies, this was just overall really disappointing. I quite liked it for the idea they had initially of just trying to save the dinosaurs on Isla Nublar once again, since the Jurassic World Park did fall, and this is set about 3 years later, I believe, after the events of that particular film. And so Owen and Claire try to launch an expedition to try and save the dinosaurs that are stranded on the Jurassic Island. And I think that as a story definitely had legs, but the B plot of actually sort of trying to once again breed a new type of dinosaur, and that was the Endoraptor based on the original DNA they had for the Indominus Rex. That story really just felt too repetitive and really didn't go anywhere, and the whole human cloning thing as well, that was the nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned for this movie. I didn't really enjoy it very much. I'd say if you have watched the other Jurassic movies, you may as well watch this one, but yeah, not one I would personally recommend, and just overall just seems to be a huge CGI fest for what it's worth, so that is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Next up is Mission Impossible Fallout, which is now the 6th installment into the Mission Impossible franchise. A franchise that I don't really have the best relationship with. Funnily enough, a commenter actually referenced a gag from one of my much older collection videos where I grabbed the original free Mission Impossible DVDs and just crammed them really crudely into a rubbish bin. That summarizes my thoughts on those movies, but with the much more recent Mission Impossible films, going from Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, now this one, this movie genuinely did top new heights in terms of an action thrill ride, and seeing this in the cinema, my brother and I actually went to see this twice because we enjoyed it that much, and sadly, watching this on Blu-ray, I watched this on a 4K TV and it was actually very good watching it at 60 FPS, but other than that, it just wasn't the same as watching it in the cinema. I really do wish I could relive the cinematic experience of watching this film basically for the first time. But as far as the movie itself is concerned, it was kind of your typical Mission Impossible plotline with terrorism, and this time nuclear weapons falling into the hands of terrorists around the globe that were basically just planning to annihilate human life itself, more or less, and with this now being Tom Cruise and the gang from the more recent movies coming together, especially with Simon Pegg's character and Rebecca Ferguson's character coming back, I thought this was definitely an exhilarating thrill ride just for really how contained it was to the more recent movies. And that definitely helped with my personal perception of these films, and I really did enjoy what the characters brought to this, such as bringing back the villain character from the previous movie, Solomon Lane. I thought that was a great touch. Henry Cavill brought a lot to this film in terms of his plot twist role, and those sequences towards the end of basically the most barbaric kind of chase sequence I've seen in film in a very long time, to do with the helicopter and cliff ordeal. Even though that was definitely elongated for the suspense, I genuinely did feel that was one of the best sequences throughout this film. And as far as the stunts go, I would recommend grabbing the Blu-ray just to see the stuff on the bonus disc in terms of the making of the movie. Really fun stuff, and something that obviously gives you a nice look behind the camera as to what really goes on in terms of making such an exhilarating movie. And yeah, that's my thoughts on Mission Impossible Fallout. Definitely a movie I would recommend. And sticking with the action theme, next up we have the complete original series of Hanna-Barbera's Jonny Quest from 1964, which this, as far as the Blu-ray release is concerned, I picked up the Blu-ray from the US Amazon, as it dropped to about, I think it was about £20 posted to the UK. And this is thankfully a region-free Blu-ray if you are interested in picking this show up. But I've been eyeing the series of Jonny Quest on DVD for quite a while, and Warner Archive seem to now be pushing the idea of going for Blu-ray releases instead with certain shows. And there are loads of shows that Warner Archive either just can't or just haven't got round to putting out there onto physical media, whether that's due to sort of music right issues or just because the print quality isn't the greatest on what prints they have of these old shows. But the restoration of this onto Blu-ray is absolutely phenomenal. and each individual panel is just so rich in color in terms of like each animated frame, and it literally looks like a comic book in terms of how rich with color it actually is. Watching this in sort of a 4:3 aspect ratio, which it kind of demands you to do, it overall adds a lot of quality to this show, and it's just overall very entertaining, kind of sort of Indiana Jones themed, sort of cartoonishly funny episodes, and yeah, overall I very much enjoyed it as a series. It was relatively short, and I'd definitely recommend checking it out. So that is Johnny Quest. And last up for the Blu-rays, we have the fourth and final season of Mr. Robots, which is a show that genuinely has taken me by surprise in recent years, and this sort of wrap-up of pretty much all the major plot threads that we have seen from the previous 3 seasons, I was overall very satisfied with the show's conclusion, and I genuinely think this series as a whole, from Sam Esmail, just rivals shows such as Breaking Bad as one of the greats from the past decade or so. And if you haven't seen Mr. Robot, it's a very underappreciated series that I think definitely does need a lot more recognition. And with episodes in here really sort of crossing the creative boundaries, such as the main one that does spring to mind from this season in particular was an episode where it was complete silence in terms of dialogue. There was absolutely no dialogue at all, but the episode was so immersive in terms of tension and action that you actually did not notice at all that none of the characters had actually spoken. And that really did shock me just after watching the full 40-minute episode, just realizing, hang on, no one's spoken. Yeah, this was genuinely a very surprising season and something that I would definitely recommend checking out as far as the show is concerned. And yes, the eagle-eyed amongst you at home will have noticed the second Season 4 Blu-ray release of Mr. Robot, which is the one that I'm actually keeping on the shelf. For whatever reason, Universal decided to release this at double the size just for the extra disc, when the other seasons of Mr. Robot are 2 to 3 discs, and 4-disc Blu-rays can exist in a standard Blu-ray case, but apparently not to Universal, so I don't really know what the thinking was there behind basically creating an obtrusive Blu-ray case on the shelf, but I fixed it myself. I'm probably going to have to reprint the artwork because it is a little bit washed out compared to the original. But I just put this through Photoshop and redid the spine just so then it would look a lot better. And there's your 4 discs, no harm done. So just a little bit of a peace of mind kind of thing for me personally in terms of how I want to keep my Blu-rays displayed in an orderly fashion. But there you go. So that was Season 4 of Mr. Robot. Similarly to how I did a CD segment in my last update video, I thought I would throw in a couple of video games for good measure, as this has been basically what has kept my sanity throughout the whole lockdown duration. And Knights of the Old Republic, the original and probably one of the best, if not the best, Star Wars games ever made, is a game that I've been sitting on for quite a while just because I picked this up in a bundle buy when I rebought the OG Xbox over eBay, and this was one of the games that was included, and I wasn't really all that interested in playing it when I got hold of it. So I just put it to the side, and I really do regret doing that, as the story for this, the story of Darth Revan, and the fight between Malak and the Republic, is genuinely one of the most fascinating Star Wars stories, and just felt so fresh coming off of the bullshit that was The Rise of Skywalker, which, as you'll note, I've still not got that on Blu-ray. And I don't know when I will get that on Blu-ray, to be perfectly honest, as I just don't care about the sequel films at this point. But this was just overall very refreshing coming off the sequel movies, and just felt like Star Wars again. So I really do hope at some point, with the 20th anniversary, surprisingly, of this game coming up in the next couple of years, I hope maybe Disney will reconsider whether or not this should be canon or not to Star Wars. I don't really see a reason why this could not be considered canon with the huge time jump of about 4,000 years between this and the Skywalker saga, but that's just my opinion, and to be perfectly honest, I feel the same about the other Star Wars games I'm about to show. So naturally I picked up KOTOR 2, The Sith Lords, which is another very intricate Star Wars video game that replicates the D&D style, and as far as sort of continuation is concerned, I think this has a time jump of about 5 years, and it doesn't follow the story of Darth Revan. Instead it follows the story of the Exile, which is an exiled Jedi character who is supposed to be considered the last of the Jedi. And the Sith characters in this story are absolutely terrifying. Darth Nihilus, this masked-looking character, is genuinely quite freaky. Likewise with Darth Sion, who I think had some great moments towards the beginning of the game. I'm still playing through this actually, so I'm not really too sure whether or not we will see any more of him, but so far, not so much really. But anyhow, this game is overall very good in terms of world building, and I think the characters especially are definitely growing on me. I love the characters in the original KOTOR, but I think the characters in this game might be slightly better. And I do quite like how characters such as T3M4, the Elastromic Droid, and HK47 have made their way into this game. Anyway, that is KOTOR 2, and the last of the Star Wars games we have is The Force Unleashed for Wii, and I picked this up on Wii just because I've had the console for many, many years, but this was only £1 on eBay, and for whatever reason I was going to buy it on Steam, and it was just maybe about £30. I think they did a bundle deal where you could get both games together, but even so, just grabbing it on console was way cheaper, and so I decided to go about it that way. I've not played this as of yet, but I do vaguely know the details behind the background of the character of Galen Marek, aka Starkiller. And this was basically the original concept idea, I guess, behind the Inquisitor. So I guess you could almost say that Galen Marek is the original Inquisitor, but either way, I'm really looking forward to checking out this game at some point in the near future, and I'll probably buy the sequel at some point to go with it. So that is The Force Unleashed. And the last two games I have to show I picked up are the Orange Box by Valve, featuring Portal, which is the main reason I grabbed it, and then obviously Portal 2 as well. And there's a funny story behind these games. I picked them up supposedly new sealed on eBay with the codes intact and whatnot, and that was complete and utter bullshit. The games were clearly used, the codes were used, so I couldn't unlock these on Steam. The installation discs were pretty much pointless anyway. And it was just an absolute mess because the seller was quite a pain in the arse about it and just did not want to admit fault in what they had done. Eventually I did get a refund, thankfully, so that was all good, and out of spite I went onto Steam and I got a pretty good deal actually. I got both Portal and Portal 2 for about £10, and I'm really glad that I did. I was actually going to film videos just showing my gameplay of these games, but I think that was just venturing too far away from my usual drift of content, so I only recorded a little bit of footage from Portal 2, which I'll put some of that on screen now, I suppose. But Portal is a game very short, but still very good and overall very entertaining as far as a puzzle game is concerned. But the bulk of this story comes from Portal 2, which is absolutely exhilarating.
Oh, I've got an idea! Yes, in your face, I got mine! Fine, let the games begin.
And as you can tell, this is particularly from the performance of Stephen Merchant as the plot twist villain. And I absolutely loved his voice acting in this game, and he was definitely the main reason I wanted to check it out in its fullest. And if you haven't played Portal 2, I would 1000% recommend checking it out. It's a fantastic game, and yeah, I'd recommend grabbing both of them. So let's move on to the DVDs. Moving on to the DVDs, first up we have Blade Runner and the sequel Blade Runner 2049. Which, as far as the original 1982 film is concerned, it's a movie that I had been recommended numerous times. I'm not really the biggest fan of Ridley Scott, but as far as this film was concerned, it just seemed to be a very interesting cult kind of sci-fi movie that just had a very bizarre release experience, especially with how convoluted the different cuts of the film were concerned. So there's obviously the theatrical cut, which I believe had a lot of studio interference, a couple of director's cuts, and then there's this version, which I believe came out in 2007, regarded as the final cut, which a close friend of mine recommended this version of the film to me. And overall, going into this film completely blind, I actually really did quite like it. I'd heard very good and then incredibly bad things about the film, and I have to say, as far as the overall aesthetics of the film go, it's very immersive, and the soundtrack paired up with those visuals, especially for a film from 1982, overall I thought this was incredibly enjoyable, and that was definitely the main thing that really drew my interest and what kept me hooked throughout the majority of the film. As far as the plot goes, it's kind of basic. Harrison Ford portrays what they term as a Blade Runner, which is essentially a futuristic-style police officer, where this is set in, I guess you could say almost at this point now, an alternative version of 2019. And Harrison Ford's character of Rick Deckard is a Blade Runner tasked with a manhunt of searching for 4 replicants, of which replicants are basically biologically engineered human beings that are very similar to humans but termed as illegal, and so he has to hunt them down and assassinate them. And as far as the manhunt sequences and assassination moments are concerned, they were definitely quite palpitating in terms of how overall kind of realistic in terms of the visual and fear aspects were concerned. And I definitely really enjoyed those scenes in particular. Those are definitely very key to the film overall. The only bits that I didn't really like were the bizarre romance sequences. And that's where the character of Rachel came into play, which I didn't really think too much of that character, and the fact that they kind of dragged that on. And that's what it ended on anyway. That was just something that I didn't really take to, and I'll be honest, I was kind of dropping off to sleep by that point of the film. But having said that, checking out Blade Runner 2049, I definitely do feel this builds on that particular aspect of the original film. But this is in its own right a very original film in itself anyhow, just set in the world of what was originally created by Ridley Scott in the first film, and this only really enhances certain key aspects of that, but delivers its own unique storyline, and there's lots of really interesting conceptual moments throughout this film, particularly with a mass corporation led by Jared Leto's character of Wallace, creating biologically enhanced humans, which are considered now legal compared to the original illegal versions of the replicants. And so this only builds on that kind of story as to what really is a human being and how that compares with AI. There's loads of great conceptual moments in this. Particularly what I really enjoyed was the character of Joy, who is a very strangely sort of digitalized girlfriend that you can just purchase as a store-bought item. And her relationship with Ryan Gosling's character of Officer K, those moments were really quite heartfelt to my surprise, with them both technically being sort of artificial people. And this begs the question as to whether or not Rick Deckard as a person was an artificial person, which is something that seems to have been lingered on from the original film. I didn't really catch those moments in the original classic, but I certainly quite like the hints that were given to us in the sequel. And I definitely feel there's really a lot more to be told in terms of stories from this world. I don't know whether or not we will get a third Blade Runner movie, but I'd definitely be open to the idea, and if it's anything as good as what the sequel was, which I kind of enjoyed a little bit more than the original, I'd definitely be open to seeing more from this world, and I'm definitely going to go back and revisit the original Blade Runner anyhow. So that's my thoughts on the Blade Runner movies. Next up we have Midnight Cowboy, starring Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight, of which I had seen a few clips of this film, mainly the intro with the, I guess you could almost say, iconic Everybody's Talking track. But I'd never seen the film all the way through, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised by this movie, and overall I found the direction of it to be very unusual, especially the ending, which I definitely did not expect and will not spoil. But the overall build of the relationship between the two characters of Joe and Ratso, I definitely thought Ratso, portrayed by Dustin Hoffman, brought a lot of comedy to the film. And the overall direction was kind of interesting, with the character of Joe with the cowboy getup trying to score with successful women in New York, just try and get money out of them. With that not really going to plan, especially with the cowboy aesthetic, we have Ratso basically trying to manage Joe's hustling career, I guess you could call it. And with the two of them trying to basically scrounge as much money together as possible and try and strangely start a life together elsewhere, things just do not go to plan. And it's overall quite a saddening buddy movie, but definitely has a lot of thought to it. So that's Midnight Cowboy, definitely a movie I would recommend. Next up we have Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which was a film recommended by my close friend, The Cryptic Cinema, aka Dean, which you can check out his channel on YouTube. And as far as this film was concerned, he sent me a couple of clips of it, and I was really intrigued, particularly by the cinematography, since he sent me this one moment which was just a full long shot, which surprised me, and instantly reading up on the plot, I just had to pick this up. And as far as the overall story is concerned, it's about a mother trying to basically get justice for her murdered daughter in a small town where the police have basically done nothing to try and either resolve or get justice for this murder. And so in order to antagonize them into doing their jobs properly, she rents out 3 billboards and writes some quite disgusting messages on there just to try and antagonize and get their attention, to try and make them do their job. And these moments in the film surrounding both the renting of the billboards and then the officer's reaction to them, overall, I thought it was definitely quite mesmerizing in terms of how the story was developing both so quickly, but with how the cinematography was doing more so showing rather than telling, which is definitely a feature of the film that I very much enjoyed. And overall, as far as the story went in terms of the plot, it went in a very unexpected direction where it didn't actually kind of resolve anything. And that could be considered a flaw to the film and could just be thought of as sequel bait, but I think that kind of leaves it at an open end, which is something that you don't often see with films of this kind of nature in terms of a kind of drama. And Frances McDormand really did do a wonderful performance as the concerned and vengeful mother. And she did win an award for her lead role in this film, which was definitely well deserved. And I would 100% recommend checking out this film. Some great acting and overall some great, interesting story threads that do spiral in a direction that you don't necessarily expect. Next up, we have Laser Blast, which is part of the Grindhouse collection from 88 Films. And this was a movie that I really got more or less as really a novelty. It's a film that I have actually wanted to watch for a number of years, but it's basically considered to be one of the worst movies ever made according to IMDb. And yeah, this really was pretty piss poor overall. As far as the plot is concerned, it's very basic and probably could have actually been done very well. It kind of speaks for itself as far as the actual tagline of the movie is concerned, but it's basically about a boy finding an alien weapon in the middle of the desert and having been pushed around by some bullies. He uses the weapon to try and seek revenge on them, only for the weapon to slowly corrupt him and turn him into a bizarre sort of zombie rage monster. And yeah, as far as the actual plot goes, even though I'm telling it quite coherently there, this movie is just all over the place and is literally just a mashup of random explosions here and there. My favorite aspect of the film were the very strangely adorable stop-motion animation aliens. There was also a brief moment where the laser blast cannon actually blows up an original Star Wars poster, which I found kind of ironic with this piggybacking off the sort of sci-fi success from the original Star Wars, with this coming out in 1978. But overall, as far as the movie goes, I wouldn't really recommend this. Maybe stream it if you're interested. There's also quite a humorous Mystery Science Theater 3000 commentary version of the film, which you can find on YouTube if you're into that kind of thing. And yeah, that is Laser Blast. Next up, we have a film that I genuinely did not even know existed until only a couple of months ago, and that is Johnny English Strikes Again, a third Johnny English movie. Yeah, definitely unexpected to say the least. I didn't really expect Rowan Atkinson to reprise his role as this character ever again after the second movie. But no, now Johnny English is a trilogy, and this was overall, even though it was a very predictable movie, it was overall very humorous. I watched this with my niece and nephew who very much enjoyed it. And this was just basically classic Rowan Atkinson comedy, just great slapstick humor and violence. And particularly my favorite sequence through this film was the virtual reality headset scene where English thinks he is in a VR world when actually he's cruising around the streets of London, causing havoc wherever he turns. And yeah, it was just overall quite a fun family film that I would 100% recommend if you're a fan of this kind of comedy or just Rowan Atkinson in general. So that is Johnny English Strikes Again. Speaking of childhood classics, we have a series that I did have in the collection many years ago that I sadly did get rid of, and I regretted doing so, so I rebought it, and that is Prehistoric Park, which was a mini-series that aired back in, I think, 2005, 2006, on the UK TV channel ITV1. And this is only a mini-series of about 6 episodes, but it was still overall very enjoyable and definitely impacted my childhood quite a lot. And having rewatched recently the Walking with Dinosaurs and Walking with Beasts shows, which I had the promotional DVDs of from the video that I did not too long ago, just showing the big box of sort of documentaries and stuff, this was one that I definitely wanted to revisit. And I put this on in the background for the duration, and I really did enjoy it, actually. It would definitely caught my attention quite a lot. And it was just great to revisit this, and this DVD set overall is quite a neat addition. It's a 2-disc DVD that actually came with some nice little art cards as well, just showing some of the predominant CGI animals and dinosaurs from the episodes. And yeah, as far as revisiting a series is concerned, this was one that I really did enjoy. And if you've never seen this before and you like the idea of it, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's quite a cheap DVD to pick up, and Nigel Marven as the host makes this a very enjoyable miniseries. And to wrap up this update video, we have a couple of animated shows. First up is South Park Season 23, which I have already done a much more in-depth video on in my unboxing video. So if you're interested in my thoughts on the episodes, or just to look at the actual packaging that this has come in, then you can check out that video on the channel. And to conclude, we have more season box sets of Mike Judge's show King of the Hill, which in my previous update video I had at that point in time only seen a couple of episodes of season 1, and as you can probably tell, I very much enjoyed that first season. I did actually do a review of that box set as well if you wanted to hear my full thoughts on the first season. So instantly after finishing season 1, I picked up season 2, which I really did enjoy. Some great Dale-focused episodes on this DVD set in particular, and I was actually kind of surprised with there being a cliffhanger finale to quite a few of these seasons as well. And so the majority of these DVD sets, they are pretty much all just 4-disc DVD box sets. And the episode counts on here, they're obviously a heck of a lot more than the first season. I believe this one has 22 episodes here in total. Next up is Season 3. This one has 25 episodes on here in total. Season 4. The 5th season, which I was lucky enough to get actually with a slipbox cover to go over it, which I'm not really too fussed about. I kind of wish, looking at the other two DVD sets, I'd gone for all the thinner versions, just so then they wouldn't take too much shelf space up, but you kind of lose out on some of the artwork if you do go in that direction. Anyway, but these are the standard UK Region 2 releases. And then I jumped over and grabbed the Region 1 release of Season 6, since I could not find this anywhere in the UK for a decent enough price. I think Season 6 onwards just seemed to be really difficult to get hold of in this country, which is kind of unfortunate. Funny story about this DVD set, however, I was actually lucky enough to get this for free. Since the seller that I bought this from was based in America, and I bought this over eBay, and they literally sent this from the US to the UK with just a piece of cardboard literally wrapped around it. No bubble wrap, no padding, nothing. And so in transit, unfortunately, the DVD case had literally just split and cracked, and the swing tray on the inside had just completely damaged in transit, which was unfortunate. But I sent those images over, just showing the damage to the seller, and immediately they just refunded me for the item, which was kind of surprising. The discs were all okay. I thought they would just ask for it to be sent back to them, which would have been fair enough, but apparently not. So they just let me keep the item, so I just replaced the DVD case, and I'm currently actually watching this season now, and I'm very much enjoying this overall. And this one is a 21 episode set, and so to have this for free, I'm certainly not complaining. So it was very kind of the eBay seller to do that. And from some good luck there, I guess you could say, we have unfortunately some bad luck. You can see from Season 6 I've actually jumped a season. I ordered Season 7 from a UK seller on eBay, and they sent me Season 8 instead. And so at the time of recording this video, I am actually still trying to work this out with the eBay seller. They're not really being difficult, they just don't seem to know what stock they have, and so trying to ask them, do you have Season 7, seems more complicated than it should be, but either way, I'll likely just keep this for the price that I paid for it. And it's another 3-disc set there, similar to the thinner Season 6 US DVD, but anyhow, that is going to do it for this Blu-ray and DVD update for August. Thank you for watching my Blu-ray and DVD update for August 2020. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments, is there anything in particular from this update video you would like to see a review of? And for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.
Are you threatening me?